All right, we're back, and former state representative Jim Christiana joining me, and I can see that he's at that beautiful sports complex that is endorsed by Shell USA. Great to see you. Of course, M7 Agency. He's also a professional NFL agent and an entrepreneur, and a guy who's also a former state representative in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Perfect night to have you here. So Reuters and Pittsburgh Business Times, we're talking about it. Nippon's talking $14 billion and a whole lot of bees going into the Mon Valley and even building a brand spanking new steel mill. Look, you're the only politician, past or present, that will actually discuss this with me. So please tell me this is all about getting this deal done. And do you think eventually our president will approve it? Good evening. How are you?
Good evening, Rob. Thanks for having me on. I don't know if you recall, but I was back on your show a while back, and we were talking about some of the things that President Trump said during the campaign about this deal. And I kind of predicted that I thought that the president was going to just renegotiate a better deal for Pennsylvania, and he was ultimately going to get this deal done. That he saw that the deal could be strengthened, and that it was not on the surface level. I think his reluctance and criticism of the deal under President Biden was that he saw that there was more opportunity on the table if he was the negotiator. And as the chief negotiator for the United States of America on trade and bringing investments into this country, I think the guy's batting pretty close to 1,000 in this term. So ultimately, I think the deal gets done, and I think it's better for Western Pennsylvania.
Some may disagree and say that a politician isn't a salesperson, but I think in essence you have to sell your product. And we have a great product here in America, and that's one of the reasons why Shell USA is helping you, and Royal Dutch Shell, different entity, of course, the Monaca power petrochemical plant. They decided to bring billions to this region, which created a lot of economic stimulus, not just for what they're doing and companies that are tied into them, but the building trades. I mean, 8,000 members of those union card-carrying building trade members were there for years. I saw what it did in Beaver County after you and then Governor Tom Corbin and others actually got this thing across the finish line. So do you believe, as I do, if you're in any office, whether it's Harrisburg or it's that municipality, township, borough, you're a mayor, large or small city, you've got to be out there trying to stir up new business for your community. Is that not correct?
Amen. I mean, the first rule, I think, of any elected official is to try to leave it better than you found it. And if that's your motivation for being in office, which oftentimes is the exception and not the rule, unfortunately, I think you have to look at your responsibility and your opportunity and say, what can I do to make this, my constituency and my district, better than I found it? And economic growth has got to be one of those high on the list. And so I do think that as a representative in the purest sense, by name, your job is to represent the interest of your constituency. And that means you got to go out and you have to sell, and you have to be an advocate. And I think that's their number one job. That's what you sign up for.
You know, I just absolutely love my drive home during the week because I go 376. I go past the Shell USA Sports Complex that you are running, and I love how the place is filled up day in and day out. And then I actually will take an exit past the exit I normally get off Monaca during the week. I get off the Beaver exit just so I can roll by the Shell petrochemical plant. So progress is possible. You have to roll the dice. Question is, it seems like more people of the Republican Party are willing to roll the dice than in the Democratic Party. Just my thought process, because I don't see enough people even talking about this U.S. Steel deal and why it's so important to get it done with Nippon Steel. So my question, do you see the Republican Party gaining a foothold, not just in Pennsylvania, but in this country? And a lot of it has to do with President Trump, because they are about building. And this whole initiative that Republicans don't back building trades, I think, is absolutely foolish. Talk about why Republicans seem to be able to get manufacturing done in a big way. And do you see them getting a stronger foothold in Pennsylvania, maybe to the point that someday we could have a Republican mayor in Pittsburgh and a Republican governor?
Yeah. So let's start from a macro level. I think the strength of any political party is a byproduct of a few factors. You mentioned number one factor, which is the most recent effectiveness of your top leaders. For the Republicans right now, that's Donald Trump. And when you look at Donald Trump's effectiveness in these first couple hundred days, they're legendary. His results and his effectiveness are legendary on so many fronts. And if you look at the Democrats and their most recent opportunity to lead, President Biden's effectiveness, say what you want, whether he was a nice guy or he was relatable, his effectiveness as commander-in-chief was absolutely a disaster, which will haunt the Democrats for a considerable amount of time. And then the second factor is the opposing party's effectiveness, right? When you're in charge to lead, you have the other party that is just an absolute anchor weighing you down. And so how effective is the Democratic Party right now? I think it's a disaster. I think their party spokespeople don't represent the interest in the goals of the people that decide the outcome of elections. Their spokespeople are fringe on the extreme end of the political spectrum. They marginalize those that are the quote unquote moderates, or the people that I think actually would help their party be more effective and strengthen. And, and the last important factor, though, about a party's strength, a party's ability to pivot from, this disaster that they're in into shifting the winds in their favor, and the effectiveness of the party that has the momentum comes down to the quality of the candidates in elections. So whether it's, a midterm election or if it's an off year, it comes down to two choices. And so for the Republicans to significantly capitalize on some of those races you're talking about, make inroads to districts they'd never controlled, they ultimately have to have great candidates. And the Democrats, their only hope right now is that they can recruit some people that can win and really good candidates, and hope that the Republicans infight in primary elections and they lose this momentum. But as of right now, I think the Republican Party is as strong as it ever has been in my lifetime, and maybe even in generations. I do think if you get nuanced and down into why that is, their ability to appeal to the building trades, there's this, unions have traditionally been Democrats for years, but there's this divide between the public sector unions and the private sector unions. And even on the public sector unions with cops and firemen, Republicans have been pulling those voters over year after year. I really think since I won in 2008 was the beginning of that transition with President Obama, who opened that door of opportunity, which I will say Republicans have strategically capitalized on. The old anti-union rhetoric has really gone away. And I think they've done a great job of appealing to people. I had this one building trade leader I remember saying to me very vividly back in 2008, 9, 10. He said, "Jim, my members don't work unless there's economic development and jobs." And that perspective, I think, is real. So who's the party creating jobs? Who's the party creating opportunities, trying to manufacture in this country again? It's been the Republican Party for more than a decade.
Well, I'm going to end on two things very quickly. Former State Representative Jim Christiana joining us now. We've been streaming this interview live on the Metropolitan Window video screen, kdkradio.com. Click on KDK Watch. A lot of people believe when you got into politics, one of the reasons why the vote now has gone in favor of more Republicans in Beaver County than Democrats, and a lot of people are buying into your message. I have to ask you before you go, big ticket item in Beaver, your hometown, who wins this mayor's race? Does Lincoln Kretschmeyer have a chance to unseat Tom Hamilton?
I think Tom Hamilton has been a pure public servant for a number of years. I think the Kretschmeyer family has been an institutional family for years. Primary elections, when you have an incumbent, typically that's the party that has supported that incumbent, right? You have to have a real fireable offense. And it's not just whether or not that person, that challenger, would do a good job in the position. That's not, unfortunately, the metric. It is that you have to fire that person and then convince people that you're a viable alternative. Do I think Lincoln Kretschmeyer is a viable alternative? Absolutely. Do I think that Tom Hamilton deserves to be fired? I can't say that that's the case.
All right, got to ask you. I have to ask you. Big ticket item tomorrow. The Democrats, the incumbent Mayor Gainey and Corey O'Connor, a young man such as yourself, who obviously become a strong voice in the Democratic Party too. Your thoughts on that? And we'll say good night.
Yeah, I'll just say that I think Corey, unlike the last example we were talking about, has made a compelling case that there's fireable offenses and it's time for new leadership. Whether or not that's enough to get over the hump, I guess we'll find out. But, most people will point to his last name as the reason for him winning. Ultimately, he has to fire the incumbent. And I think he's made a compelling case for that. So unlike the other mayor race that we were talking about, I think this one's going to be really interesting and could result in a change.
Man of many hats, a true talent, former state representative Jim Christiana, now an NFL agent. So please tell me Aaron Rodgers is going to sign soon with the Steelers.
I don't know what to believe on the internet and social media, but I find it interesting that some pictures were leaked that he was house hunting in Pittsburgh. So that was the first indication that to me that could actually happen. But as we all are getting anxious to know about the quarterback situation in this season, clearly there's plenty of time, but we're all getting anxious.
Hey, listen, you're the best. Thanks for giving me such time, and keep up the great work, okay?
Thanks, my friend. Thanks for having me on.
Jim Christiana, bright light for sure. We'll come back. Lots to talk to with your Pratte Pack next on KDKA.